Hello and welcome to episode 160 of the eComOne podcast. Today's guest is Mike Shields, Head of Digital PR here at our agency eComOne. In this podcast, he talks all things digital PR, talking about how you can get heard in the journalist's busy inbox, how to get your brand recognition and tell a story that people actually want to hear. So right, let's get straight into the episode, and I introduce you to Mike Shields. Hello, Mike, and welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, and I'm ready to talk all things digital PR with you.
No, I'm really excited, and thank you so much for joining me. So, how did you get into digital PR?
I guess from being a journalist back in the day, I sort of enjoyed English very much back in the day. So, yeah, just like that ability to write stories and things was always something that appealed. So getting into PR was quite an easy sort of jump for me to make. Journalism is completely different. It's the other side of the sort of fence, as it were. But like getting to know clients and sort of get to know what makes them tick and what's appealing about them is kind of why I got into it.
No, that's amazing. That's a great story. But how did you find the shift from traditional PR to digital PR? Because you were originally from like a traditional agency, weren't you?
Yeah, in the past I've kind of learned very traditional news writing, they call it, kind of techniques and ways to kind of make an impact from a reputational point of view. But I think the shift to digital, I think everyone's kind of had to make it. So there are still traditional PR professionals out there and they do a great job. But to be noticed, and particularly for e-commerce, I think it's really important to engage in what makes, what people are reading, basically, what people are interested in, and like almost identifying that before you even go out with the story. You know, a news story is only as good as the people that are going to read it. And, you know, you could have the best story in the world in your opinion, but if no one's interested, then why bother in the first place?
Yeah, no, I completely agree that. I see that across the industry, that people really struggle to see the value in digital PR and really sort of make it really tangible as well. So how do you overcome that challenge?
I think people often want to see the numbers, don't they? They want to see the sales figures, they want to see the visitors on their website, etc. So what I always say is like it's really good when used in tandem with other services. I've sort of talked about this in a lot of presentations I've done lately. So it's basically why don't you make your stories that are always like going on within those services, whether it's pay-per-click, whether it's SEO, or email marketing even, into stories that you can kind of use again and again and sort of have there as like ammunition almost to sort of make it work. And in terms of value, it's always been a really hard thing to prove for PR. PR is almost like the stepchild in the sort of marketing mix sometimes, because, you know, you can tell a great story and you can get those results, you can get the coverage and everything. But how do you prove the worth? How does that translate to sales? So essentially what you need to think of is, does it marry up with the SEO? Does it marry up with what people are searching for in the first place? So if you can come up with a story that answers those questions or can kind of increase that search volume for someone, then why wouldn't you? And I think just having that intrinsic kind of link back to a client's website through digital campaigns and digital storytelling is really important, because that's where you actually see the difference in the SEO and you can kind of trace it back through that. So I'd say always pair it with what other sort of techniques that you're using at the same time, and don't just rely on coverage and things like that, because it can be a trap that people fall into.
Yeah, no, I get that. But for someone like me, that we have something that we want to put out, but we struggle to actually put it into a story because we see like the facts and obviously the sort of base around that. What advice would you give to that?
I think just having creative people around you, such as PR professionals, is always really valuable, because, you know, you can I think we've got the ability to identify a story and what will actually fly and what won't. And we're sort of very good at that kind of, there's rules within journalism that we sort of apply to PR, like, you know, is it relevant? Is it sort of timely? Will it make a difference to people? Will they be interested in it in the first place? And just being current with it, I think, because a lot of people might think they have a great story on their hands, and then when you actually identify, it's like, well, actually, that's way too commercial. That's just going to be stating a commercial fact to people. They don't care about that. They want to know the whys, the wherefores, how things have been come up with. Something within your data, that's another thing that's huge within digital PR at the moment. It has been for a few years. Accessing data points that no one else has access to, or finding data out there that's like relevant to a lot of people and that is just freely available that you can bend to your story.
Yeah, I saw a story once, which was a gaming brand, and they basically created like this, what a gamer would look like in like
It's a famous
30
one, isn't it?
years. Yeah. And obviously they used data and research what they had to create a viral campaign. And I thought that was really smart. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of creating that wow factor and like the sort of the reason why people would want to engage with it. And, you know, if you've got an engaging and like really shareable piece of content like that, it's going to go far, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was like 3 years old as well. And I feel like it came out recently as well that a gamer actually took off their headset and they actually had, had the line across their head.
It's unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah. So what are some of the strategies that e-commerce companies can do to really land a story and get heard in the journalist's inbox?
Okay, so I guess quite a few techniques you can use to tell a story and sort of get those links back and sort of make that impact, really. So we do a lot of different strategies here at eComOne. It's very much based on each client's kind of needs and kind of the nature of their business, but there's several different ways. So for one, we use something called newsjacking, which is like tailcoating on news stories that are occurring or that you know that are going to occur. So finding like comments that you can kind of apply directly to things that are breaking. Like, for example, Wilko's recently went into administration. We're sadly losing our one in Lincoln, which is really a shame. It's also like one of those flagship stores. Like, okay, yeah, I'll meet you outside of Wilko's. It's like a central point.
And the pick a mix. You can't get a Wilko pick a mix half price when the school holidays.
Where are people going to go? So, but, you know, they were like in the news for a few weeks while that was happening. So we work with an insolvency practitioner who sort of deals with companies kind of failing, and they were able to actually like coattail on that and just sort of like make comments and sort of be the expert to talk about that sort of thing. And they ended up on, you know, national news stories and you know, GB News and things like that, just from being there and being the expert. And that's kind of one really good way of landing sort of coverage and links back to websites. However, like I think the best way to do it these days is a big campaign. That's like you can either say, right, okay, we're going to come up with a concept like the gamer sort of stature in a few years' time, or you can kind of look at data points that you might have, gather them together, present it as something that's like integral to your brand, like reflects your brand strategies or like your values or your knowledge. And make a story out of that, and then have that sort of resource on your website so there's no excuse for them not to link back to you. It's a laborious process, and it can take quite a while to sort of get together. But I think if you do it properly, it can make a real impact.
No, that sounds amazing. So with newsjacking, do you need to have the same sort of voice person for the company, or can you use different? So for example, like with B2B, if we were going to do a lot of newsjacking, we'd typically use obviously the CEO, because he's quite a focal point and he's a good thought leader, or could you have other members of the team?
Really, it just needs someone to be willing to have their name put to it. I think you can come up with almost like a consensus from various different people on a team. It doesn't have to be that named person. You know, I think the CEO is obviously the sort of like the person you want there for, you know, a personal branding perspective. But if you've got like a technical person that can answer a lot of questions on your side as well, then make use of them. Even if they don't want their name used, you can say, well, actually the CEO knows all about this and he says this, that and the other. And it can come out with some really pertinent points and make you seem like you know a little bit more than you do. You can seem even more like the expert in your field.
No, that's great. Thank you for that, Mike. So this could be a bit of a risky question because we're currently on a podcast.
Go for it.
Are you ready? So do you think podcasts are too saturated?
I think so, but that is only a good thing, I think. Like in time, I think they called, was it 2018 or 2019, they called the year of the podcast. And since then, it's only got bigger and bigger. There's like billions of people listen to them on a weekly basis. Like a daily commute to me is like a podcast. I've got about 4 or 5 that I follow. And I'm sure we're all the same. We've all got different interests. And I think that's the key. It's finding a unique standpoint and a unique way to talk about something that kind of makes a podcast relevant. And I think if you just go out there and do what almost like copy verbatim what someone else is doing, or, you know, go out there and create one that is only of interest to really you or a very, very small group of people, then you might have a bit of trouble getting noticed. But if you can find a niche where either something hasn't been covered or hasn't been covered in a particular way, there's loads of space out there. There's loads of listeners out there. I think it's become a little bit oversaturated with corporate ones. There are a lot of companies with ones where they have one almost for the sake of having one. It's like, oh, we've got a podcast. It's like, well, is it garnering an audience, or is it kind of just existing because you think it's the right thing that you need to have? And I'd question whether you need to do it if it's just an exercise, almost like I'd say a PR exercise, or like for the sake of appearances.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. One thing that we love about this podcast is with our guests, we learn from it ourselves. So we see it a huge value for our company as well as our audience. But yeah, there is some great ones on there, but I always find the more authentic, real, relatable ones to be the ones that I continuously go back to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've got your own podcast as well, don't you, Mike?
Of course, yeah. It's not everyone's taste, but it's, the Ninehurst podcast, playing heavy metal every week, 9 new releases every week. There's a little plug.
Nice. Yeah. Can't beat a plug.
Yeah, but obviously we try and be niche as well. We're covering a certain aspect of music that not everyone is into, but the people that are into it really want to hear it. So it's great, and it's grown over time. It shows it can be done even on like a small level.
No, that's great to hear. So to anyone that's listening to this and thinking, okay, a podcast, we've got a great topic that we could talk about, we could really grow an audience and help the audience and add value to them. What advice would you give them in regards to starting, to growing, and to getting a team on board as well?
I'd say just start. Even if you've got only the very start of an idea to begin with, I think there's a lot of value in just having a go, and you don't have to publish everything that you record. Have a go, see if it's actually something that you can do. Microphones and setups are quite sort of simple. Obviously, we've got the camera setup and everything like that. That's something you can develop and work into. But initially, all you need is maybe 2 people on a microphone. You can do it remotely. You can do it audio only. You don't have to film it at all. I mean, obviously, filming helps. You can spread it across social media a lot easier that way. But really, it's just a lot of experimentation to begin with, and learning as you do it, because you're not going to get better until you get sort of used to it. One thing I always say is to actually have, if you're going to start a podcast from scratch, have 5 or 10 episodes just recorded before you even publish the first one, because I think regularity and consistency is really key here. Because if you have a listener that sort of tunes in for episode 8 and you haven't recorded episode 9 and you've not got 3 weeks, you haven't done anything, they might just switch off and they might just drop off as a listener, and it's not very good. Maybe use old episodes to fill in if you're not going to produce on a weekly basis. Okay, we've got a flashback episode this week. You can have other podcast guests, things like that. So it's just having that regularity and almost treating it like another aspect, another sort of department almost within your business. It's really valuable.
Yeah, it's like any sort of marketing, isn't it? It's like consistency that helps you grow and helps your audience know that, yeah, you will be here next week, and then tune in again, and then obviously build on that sort of audience you already have.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than, like you say, you're eager for the next episode. It's like Netflix, isn't it? That's why they put everything all in one go, because we like binge watching everything.
We're too impatient, aren't we?
We want it yesterday.
I'd say really as well, be consistent with the format as well. So don't just sort of go into something thinking, right, we'll just talk for half an hour. We'll just talk for an hour. Have questions, have a specific thing that you do every time. We always ask people, what's your favourite book? What's your favourite business book or whatever? We have a set sort of standard for my podcast. There's loads out there that they'll have the same structure every time, so people know what to expect. If they suddenly turn on and it's it's a live one this time, and it's completely different, they might just think, well, I'm not interested. They've clearly run out of ideas. What's going on here? So maybe sort of do little intros if you're going to do that sort of thing, but keep it as sort of regular and as normal in inverted commas as possible. Yeah,
I should have said disclaimer there. Mike's going to get what's his book recommendation later.
Yeah. I've had to think about that.
But yeah, that is what we've literally got in every single 159 podcasts. So yeah, it's been very good actually. A lot of people actually say, yeah, we read that book and enjoyed it, because it is appropriate. Books are great.
I just wanted to introduce you very quickly to our sponsors, Pricing. Now, Pricing is a competitive price tracking and monitoring software that can dynamically change a product's prices on all sales channels. They work with brands such as Samsung, Sony, Suzuki to increase their online revenue. Now, if you run Google Shopping, which I know a lot of you absolutely do, this software is absolutely key to accelerating profits. One of the reasons I recommend Pricing to my clients is because you can find out your competitors' pricing and stock availability all in one simple to understand dashboard, giving you a huge competitive advantage. Now, if you have any inquiries and questions about this software, or you're ready to get cracking, we have worked out a very, very special deal for our listeners where you can get a free month's trial and then 25% off for the first 3 months. Head to eComOne.com pricing and complete the inquiry form, and we will connect our listeners to the Pricing team. Right, let's head straight back to the episode.
So what are some of the sort of common mistakes that you see in your industry?
I think in digital PR, it's a really common fallacy that using data is always a good thing. I think sometimes there's almost a lot of campaigns that come out and you're like, is that actually interesting? Is that actually reliable? I think the standards in data need to maybe be looked at. So, if you're looking at a certain sample size, is that really big enough? Are journalists going to make that connection? Are they going to say, well, actually, that's enough people that you've surveyed, or that's enough people that you've looked into, or enough data points that you've gathered together to be a valuable story? I think these days journalists are very, very hungry for stories, but they can spot a really good one like a mile off. And I think one thing that leads to is rejection. Okay. And I think a lot of people kind of give up at the first hurdle sometimes. PR is an intensely competitive department to sort of manage. So when you're sort of putting out your stories, you've got to think that for every journalist out there, there's probably 3 or 4 PR professionals trying to land a story. So you've got to be consistent and actually not give up when you get like a no or a no reply. But it's having that balance between knowing when to stop and knowing when to give it one more go to see if you can get that little bit of coverage. So I'd say it's just having that weird balance. And I think a lot of people either give up way too easily or they steamroller ahead and do too much. So I think you need to kind of find your calm within PR and sort of take a step back and a breath just before you start another campaign or whatever. And don't be discouraged. I think that's another thing. You can kind of put out a campaign, have no coverage whatsoever. God, this is hard. We're not going to get anything ever. You can just throw your toys out the pram and think, I'm done with it. It's not working. It's like, well, it hasn't worked this time, but you just pick yourself up and start again. It's very tough. You've got to have thick skin, I think, sometimes.
It sounds that way. Do you think that's a personal mindset thing, or is that something you've developed over the years?
It's something you definitely have to develop. I think when you first start with it, you kind of like, well, we've clearly failed. It was a rubbish story. It was just awful. No, maybe not. Maybe it's just a bad week. Maybe other news was trumping it at the time. Maybe the angle wasn't quite right, but reworking something can really help. Okay. I've had campaigns that just haven't landed at all. That does happen. Like any PR professional will tell you that. But taking another look and going, actually, if we change the viewpoint here, if we change the narrative, could we get something out of it? And it has worked in the past. So it's just having that kind of confidence to that, no, this is a good story and we can get something out of this eventually.
Yeah, that tenacious sort of attitude of just keep on trying, and then hopefully something comes from it. Have you found that's happened sort of with a client, sort of the clients you've worked on in the past?
It has in the past, and you kind of have to rely on your clients being patient and trusting you to sort of go through the process, but it's also being canny enough to know when to actually give up on a story or whether to try again quickly. And it's how fast you can move, I guess, in that sort of situation. So no 2 days are ever the same in PR, and no 2 campaigns are ever the same. I think that's true for the whole industry, really.
I think that's why it's so fun, though, isn't it? It's like endless opportunities and endless directions.
It's several jobs in one because you're being creative, you're being someone who's trying to convince someone of something. Then you're like a marketer when you're trying to sort of get all the data back and everything. It's complex, but it's loads of fun. Like we say, it's loads of fun.
Is it something that you're going to do forever and ever, do you reckon?
Wow, that's a big question, isn't it? Yeah, I guess as long as there are stories to tell, then I'm interested. And yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you use any sort of AI or anything to help shape your campaigns?
It's actually come up really, really recently. So we're doing a campaign at the moment where I had several tranches of data, and they were brilliant bits of data. And I was like, this is fantastic. How can I make this make sense? I had like one set of data here, one in the middle. And I was just like, right, I know there is a story within all this. Like, how can I do it? So obviously ChatGPT has been huge. It's really good for planning out factual things. So if you want something that's like relying on the law, relying on like mathematics or stats or anything, surprisingly good for that. Obviously, we wouldn't use it to write a press release verbatim because it just misses that human element. It won't have the sort of corporate values that you want to sort of expound like within all that. However, it came up with the best way to present this data I've ever seen, and it kind of came up with the methodology of how it came to that conclusion as well.
That's really smart.
So we were able to, take this almost like an unwieldy bunch of numbers and stats and make it make sense and almost like rank it. So yeah, I'm hoping that campaign flies. now it's done all that sort of number crunching in the first place.
I bet it will. So has it saved you a lot of time then, I'm guessing?
Yeah, that definitely did. I think, when it comes to kind of logically kind of putting very complex data together, it's like a godsend. It's absolutely amazing. In terms of creating content, because we also look after content here at eComOne, we sort of we sort of lump PR and content together because it just makes sense. It's just like we are the arbiters of our clients' kind of messaging, so why not kind of all deal with it all together? And for content, it's great for planning. It's great for like, okay, how can I come up with a brilliant intro for this that everyone gets writer's block. If you're writing tons and tons, you get it even worse. It's a really good it's another crutch to lean on if you really need it. It's there. But yeah, I wouldn't advocate using it for absolutely everything.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of worry out there of it like stealing people's jobs. I personally don't think it ever will. You can never replace humans. But yeah, what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I think I agree. So I mean, obviously when it came up, you're like, oh, no, this is going to like destroy like the whole industry of people. But then you realise actually it is missing that essential kind of soul. And I think it is getting better. We do use several different AI sort of programs to create content, and it's really sort of exciting to see what it can do. But I think because each client that we work with is unique and has unique products and unique sort of like selling points, it's never going to understand that as much as we do. And the context, I think, is what's missing from it. So it's taking it with a pinch of salt, and it's having that kind of knowledge to know, okay, don't just use this verbatim because it's gonna come back at you. And we don't know whether Google or any of the search engines are going to kind of come back and say, well, actually, we're not going to accept AI written content anymore. So we'd have to like rethink on a sixpence and think, right, okay, what do we do now? Do we have to write all that stuff again, or can we go and look into it and find it all again? So I think the argument that it's going to take people's jobs is probably redundant, to use a sort of suitable phrase. And it'll be really interesting to see where it goes in the future.
I think, yeah, across the board with marketing, though, it's becoming more human, and humans are wanting to relate to humans and see the humans behind the brand, isn't it? That whole brand personality piece.
Authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've put in robotic, repeated content out there, it's never going to stand the test of time. So that's why humans need to work with it. So obviously it saves time. It obviously can get so much data so quickly, but obviously humans need to have that sort of extra bit of sparkle to the content to help it grow and help their customers sort of relate to them and actually buy from them. So yeah, I completely agree. So obviously you do all these amazing campaigns. Some fly, some don't. And obviously we've suggested that some people don't necessarily see the value straight away. But how could you determine the success of a campaign? Say, obviously, a PR has put that out there, it's got links, or is it to do with the brand recognition?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things, really. So I think in the past, there's been almost a real difficulty tracking what PR can do. There used to be, I mean, we could go back to like, the 90s. That sounds so long ago when you say the
Which
90s. the 1890s, a printing press. No, you know, they used to measure it literally by column inches. Like if you got column inches in like real estate in a newspaper or a magazine, that was how you measured and reported back to your clients, which is mad when you think about it now, like literally measuring an article.
Could you imagine that? But like, oh, so I've got you 2 columns.
Or so however many inches this
yeah.
But now, you know, you've got a slew of kind of measurement tools to kind of show where things are. So we use several different kind of reporting sort of methods, and that shows like domain authority, like the website that we've got a landed link on, the sort of audience, the estimated organic audience, things like that. So there are like measurements and like almost like vanity measurements out there. But also, if you have got access to a client's back end of their website, there's ways you can like look at, has there been an increase in organic traffic? Is there kind of more people landing here for the search term that we included in that press release? It's up to like the SEO team. Really, it's a sad fact to actually look to see if we've actually made an impact. But I think if you've come up with a story and you've actually made it land on a sort of like a reputable website, I think the brand recognition and the messaging out there counts for a lot, even if it might not reflect straight away in sales or you know, visitors to your website. And I think if you've got that resource on your website and something else, and you can go kind of do a lot of internal linking on that as well, it'll keep people on site, and it's all kind of, it's helping all the other marketing mix to do their job as well.
I do believe that digital PR is sometimes like a forgotten part of the marketing mix that isn't utilised enough, because like you're saying just then, obviously the brand recognition, the links, the domain authority, it can be really powerful for a business. Definitely. So no, obviously we've got just one disclosure question, you know, left. The big one, the one that we've done on 159 podcast episodes. So we'll see if you repeat what somebody else has said. I don't think we've had that yet, you know.
Okay.
So we've never had the same book recommended twice. So this could be a first.
Okay.
So Mike, what is your book recommendation?
Well, this was actually one that Richard recommended I read, actually, and it's The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And yeah, it's basically the idea that it's known, like, I'm very bad at like ruminating on things. I rethink things and play them over in my head, and I worry about the future, and I'm a worrier basically. And it kind of basically calmed me down. It sort of focuses on, you can't change anything but the moment you're in. What's done is done. If you can learn from that and sort of apply it to what you do in the future, that's great. But there's no point kind of placing your mind in that past that you can't change, or in the future that you don't really have control of. In the end, it's all about like what you're actually looking at the moment. And I think that's really valuable for work, but it's always like really valuable for life as well. You know, you can go, if only I'd done that, if only I'd done that, or, you know, oh, I'll never get here. Well, you won't thinking like that, will you? You've got to kind of like, what can you do today to make that happen? Or what can you do today to make whatever's happened in the past better?
I think a lot of people will relate to that as well, because I speak to a lot of people that struggle with that, like being in the present. And like you say, it's absolutely critical, isn't it? Absolutely. To be in the present. Like even this morning when I was driving in, I was stuck behind someone doing 30 miles per hour the whole way here. And I was like, I'm not going to get stressed, because if I'm late, I can't control it, because I can't make them suddenly go faster. And I wasn't, so it's fine. But there's no point getting stressed on things you can't control, but it's easier said than done.
I think it's all about like being aware of your thoughts as well. Like if you're going into like cycles of thinking, it's like almost like tapping yourself on the shoulder and going, why are you thinking about that?
Yeah.
You can't do anything about it. Calm down, move on. Have a nice day. Give yourself a nice day.
Yeah.
And that's important to remember.
No, that's a great attitude to have. I fully agree with you there. But no, that's it. That's all we've got time for today. So yeah, massive thank you, Mike, for joining me on the eComOne podcast. It's been great. Hopefully our audience have got loads of value from that and can go, and we want to see more digital campaigns out there, don't we? Digital PR.
Exactly.
So yeah. But no, thank you, Mike, and thank you to everybody listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.